The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to Wellness Wednesday on W4CY Radio, brought to you by the Entertainment Network. My name is Holly Kenley. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist and host of Kenley's Keys for Recovery. Thank you for tuning in. It is so good to be with you. I often say wellness awaits each of us. We choose the time. By listening in today, you have chosen wellness. I believe that most people want to be healthy in their lives, and yet sometimes they need a little help, and that's what this show is about. We're here to inform you and restore you. What do I mean by that? Each week we will take a topic of recovery, such as grief or addiction or depression, or a social issue or behavior that presents a challenge to our mental health or well-being, such as domestic violence or betrayal or bullying, or it could be both. And each week, we're going to do two things. First, we're going to grab hold of keys to understanding what you are experiencing or going through. You see, I believe that when we have an understanding as to what is going on and why, that in and of itself is the first step in recovering. And then secondly, we're going to get the keys to unlock your recovery. We're going to examine specific healing steps, strategies, tools, and exercises to become engaged in our recovery. This is important. I believe that there are no quick fixes. Recovery is not a noun or an adjective. It's a verb, and it takes time and hard work. Many times you'll hear me use the word recovering with an ing because it means action. Sayings and platitudes are wonderful only if we put them into action. Also, we're going to move one step at a time, one day at a time, sometimes one breath at a time. We're not going to cover 15 topics in 15 minutes or 20 different things to change. Why? Because when we feel overwhelmed with too much information, we won't do any of it. Lastly, what makes this show so special is that we're going to work hard at staying with topics and themes of each month. However, if something comes up in the news or you let me know about topics that interest you, we may dive into those. And if it's not my area of expertise, I will tell you and look for resources that can help you. I do want to mention that some topics may not be appropriate for minors, and I will let you know. Today on the show, we're going to be discussing bullying and cyberbullying. We will be back in 60 seconds. Get a piece of paper and a pencil. You may want to take some notes. Let's start today. Let's start now. Let's grab the keys and begin unlocking your recovering. Holly Kenley, licensed marriage and family therapist and host of Kenley's Keys for Recovery. October has so many important issues: bullying, domestic violence, and breast cancer awareness. Today, though, we're going to continue our discussion on bullying and cyberbullying. Last time, we learned some background knowledge, and we looked at how to intervene, how to step in and make it better for the short term and long term. Next, we're going to look at two other critical keys in addressing bullying and cyberbullying: protection and prevention. Let's get the keys to understanding what each of these terms mean and why they are important. First, let's start with protection. I want you to think for a minute about all the different things that you do in your life to protect you, to help keep you safe and healthy, or to lower your risk of harm. Let's think about just a few personal things that we do. We eat certain foods and we avoid others. We exercise and we stay active. In our home, we do things to protect ourselves, like lock our doors. And if you have little ones in the home, you baby-proof your cabinets and doors. In California, we even earthquake-proof our homes. Medical issues, too, we take steps to protect ourselves. We take medications. We go to doctors for appointments and for checkups. And we even do things in our social life, such as following the laws and driving the right speed. All of these habits or practices help keep us safe and healthy or lower our risk of harm, but they do not prevent unhealthy or harmful things from happening to us. This is important because we need to be honest and realistic with ourselves, especially when we're looking at potentially dangerous and harmful behaviors such as bullying or cyberbullying. It is our human nature that we want to think or believe that protection is the same thing as prevention. Let's compare that for a minute just to an analogy of when we're driving our car. I want you to think about all the steps that we go through to protect ourselves. Most of us in our states have to take driver's education, driver's training, a written test, a driving test, and even then, in some states, we have to have more practice drive time in the car. After all of that, when we get ready to navigate the roads, the freeways and the highways, we make sure we put on our seatbelts, adjust our mirrors, and so on and so forth. You know, we don't think twice about this. We just do it. But we need to keep this in mind and take this understanding and apply it to our relationship with technology. We need to remember that we take these steps to prepare us and to protect us. Unfortunately, it does not prevent harm. Let's move on to prevention. What's the difference and what does it mean? You know, one thing that I really like about prevention is that it's why I'm so fascinated and interested in psychology. Because when we look at prevention, we examine and find out the cause. Finding out the cause, most times we are able to stop the harm or injury from coming our way, and or there's real hope from keeping it from getting worse. Now I want you to think for a second again about all the things you do in your life that actually prevent harm or injury from coming your way or from getting worse, where you address the cause or its source. And even then, it may not be 100% guarantee. Let's look at a few examples. Again, let's look at in the medical field. I know that adults and elders oftentimes get flu shots, shingle shots, to hopefully prevent from getting those. Children get various vaccinations with the same reasoning and rationale behind it. We take medications, and we have surgical procedures, tonsils out, appendix out, so that we don't get those diseases or those disorders or illnesses. Let's look at our personal life again. Again, we avoid certain foods that we know might prevent something from happening. I know I have a terrible allergy to shrimp. I prevent getting that allergy by avoiding that food. My daughter has a terrible allergy to penicillin, so of course we avoid giving her that medication. And again, in our social life, we obey laws that hopefully prevent us from getting certain tickets or worse. So prevention is getting at the cause or source, and it is definitely more of a challenge and hard work, but it is possible, especially with bullying and cyberbullying. Last time we learned that bullying and cyberbullying are deliberate, aggressive behaviors, and for the most part, they are learned behaviors. We did say there are exceptions with mental health issues and other underlying pathology. This is important. Please listen carefully. Cyberbullying and bullying are symptoms or manifestations of an underlying cause. What is the cause? What is at the root of this behavior? It is in my opinion, a lack of empathy. Think about it. We cannot deliberately harm another person and care about that individual simultaneously. We cannot disrespect, degrade, or dehumanize another individual and at the same time have compassion, respect, human regard for their rights and their being. You might be asking, what is creating or causing such a lack of empathy? And what is its relationship to technology? Although this is a complex question, I believe what is cultivating an erosion of empathy lies in this behavioral concept. Listen closely. The degree of access or exposure to or consumption of anything is a strong predictor to the degree of consequence or outcome, either positive or negative. Let me say that again, and why I want you to think of any kind of social behavior, not just bullying or cyberbullying, but drinking or drugs or violence, whatever it might be. Once again, the behavioral concept is the degree of access or exposure to or consumption of anything is a strong predictor to the degree of consequence or outcome, positive or negative. Let's just think of some ordinary, everyday examples of this behavioral concept. We're just coming off of summer, and if you're in a state that has a lot of sunshine like mine does, we've been hearing a lot about the degree of exposure to the sun. Why? Because that degree of exposure is a predictor of the degree of consequence we might have on our skin and with problems with it. For years, we've been hearing about the degree to which we consume processed foods. And we're finding out more and more information how that's a predictor of sometimes of weight issues and other health problems. Let's look at a positive example. We know, and I am a former teacher, that the more that we expose our children to literature and to reading when they're young, that there's a good predictor that they'll be more interested in reading and even be better readers as they grow and mature. So that behavioral concept, I want to integrate that in with our relationship with technology. Right now, I want you to think about the degree of access, exposure, even consumption, if you will, that you spend on and with technology. Just even think about the time that each of us spends on our technology. Well, what is happening to us? How is it affecting us? And if so, how is that happening and why is that happening? Over the past 5 to 6 years, I have been fascinated by this topic, and I've been looking at lots of research in over a dozen countries. What I have to share with you today is so important, and I am going to focus on cyberbullying, but remember from last time that cyberbullying is largely correlated and connected to traditional bullying. I need you to remember this, is that when we communicate electronically, we are not face-to-face, obviously. And we call that indirect communication. With that indirect communication, there are 3 important features or factors that create, cause, and cultivate a change in our ability to feel empathy for another individual. How can that be? Let me explain. Over time, and as we continue to communicate indirectly, number 1, there is a sense of disconnect with another individual that begins to form within us. Why? Because of the anonymity provided by technology. Typically, we are by ourselves or working alone, and or we are behind a screen or a phone or some type of device. With that anonymity comes a detachment from the real world. We are also physically distant from another individual, and there is a sense of disinhibition. What that means is that no one is watching over us, and that leads to freeing up of what we say or do. Now, I want to ask you a question. I want you to be honest with yourself. Do you behave differently when someone is watching over you and when they are not? Think just about at work or as you're going about your day and how you change when your boss comes into the room or your supervisor or when someone else enters into your space. 2 years ago when I was a teacher, I was talking to a friend of mine, a teacher friend, Robert. He was an amazing teacher. He always did a good job. But he said, you know what, Holly, whenever I'm going to be evaluated, when the principal comes into the room or the vice principal, I always try to do even better. And you know what? That's just human nature. So number two, because of this anonymity and the freeing up of ourselves, again, over time and with repeated usage, we also begin to feel empowered. Why? What's going on? When we're communicating electronically, we don't have to be stronger or bigger or better. And it's easy to do things we might not do face-to-face. We can reach almost anyone, and we have this expansive audience. And as we get away with minor offenses, we become more confident, more emboldened, and we become more empowered. Again, I want you to think of a time when you did something you were not supposed to do, and you didn't get caught. And the next time you did it, you felt perhaps a little bit more powerful, a little bit more sure of yourself. When I was a teenager, my parents had a pretty firm and strict curfew. But that didn't keep my older sister and I from sneaking out of the house, going out the bedroom window or going out the front of the house, and then taking the car, pushing it down the street, then starting it and taking off. And as we got away with this each time, we became more sure of ourselves and more confident. Again, this is only human nature. If we can get away with something, we will. This leads us into our third feature about communicating indirectly or electronically. We're feeling anonymous. We can hide. We're protected behind the screen. And with this growing confidence, feeling powerful, this third piece sets in. And this is really important. These feelings of disconnect and empowerment are actually reinforced by the technology itself and the online factors that take place in cyberspace. Why? How can this be? I want to give you 4 factors. There are more, but 4 factors that actually will show you and teach us and tell us how these behaviors of empowerment, these feelings of empowerment and disconnect are reinforced. Number 1, when we post or share something hurtful or harmful, or even if it's something positive, it's reinforced by others as they like it, they share it, and we feel that reinforcement coming back, and then we pass it on more. Other people like it, share it, and sometimes it even goes viral. So that behavior, again, is conditioned. Number 2, for the most part, there's no monitoring, and the behavior goes unchecked. When we're with someone and we're not behaving the way we should or acting the way we should, that behavior is called up and it goes checked. But when we're communicating indirectly, it doesn't, and thus it is reinforced. That feeds into the third reason, or this third feature of cyberspace. There is very little, if any, face-to-face reaction. And what happens when we are not face-to-face with someone and not seeing their reaction, there's nothing to modulate our behavior. Or we kind of say psychologically, there's no feedback loop. Think about it when you're standing and talking with someone or interacting with them, and your words affect them a certain way, make them sad, make them unhappy. As a healthy individual, we will usually do something to modulate what we've said or to make them feel better. Again, when we communicate electronically, we don't have that taking place. The fourth factor is really important in reinforcing these feelings of empowerment and disconnect. Time is irrelevant. We know that to correct a behavior and redirect it, that it needs to be caught in a timely manner, if not on the spot. And with cyberbullying and with bullying sometimes too, it is not caught in a timely manner, and thus it's reinforced. I want you to take this whole concept of reinforcement and conditioning, and I want to relate it to you as a parent. Those of us who have raised children can think back, or right now, if you have little ones at home, especially if you have around a 2-year-old, This is a time when they are feeling more autonomous. They are testing the world, aren't they? They're wanting more independence, more say or power, if you will. How effective would it be to parent them from a block away? I know it would be dangerous, so that's understood. But let's say you were a block away. They would do what they want. Their behavior would go unchecked, and thus it would be reinforced. And your being and your face and your reaction obviously would not be there to guide them and redirect them. And when you do return, how effective would your redirection of their behavior be? Would probably be pretty irrelevant. And the behavior would be even more conditioned. This same concept is so true of technology. As we get ready to go to a break, please think about this. Our relationship with technology is very important to us, but we must keep in mind our degree of access. The time we spend with it is a predictor of our degree of consequence, the erosion of empathy. It may be happening ever so slowly. We don't feel it, but we do see it in the bullying and cyberbullying behaviors. At the end of the show today, I'm going to share a story of a family who is using technology, but who is mindful of how to keep themselves healthy in the process. This family has taken the Cyber Balance Challenge and put it to work. For now, let's take a second break. When we return, we'll get the keys to protect and the keys to prevent. You're listening to Kenley's Keys to Recovery. We'll be right back. This is Holly Kenley, licensed marriage and family therapist and host of Kenley's Keys for Recovery. We're talking about bullying and cyberbullying. Now let's get ready and grab hold of some keys to protect our children and us from bullying and cyberbullying, and some keys to prevent it. Because of time, but also because of the prevalence of cyberbullying and our ever-increasing dependence on technology, we're going to focus our keys on cyberbullying. However, many of the steps do apply to bullying, and please refer to my blog and my website for more steps with bullying. Let's start with protection and get 3 keys. And let's just as a reminder, remember that with protection, we're going to lower the risk of harm and help keep us safe. Okay, get ready. This first key is mandatory. And sometimes when I mention this, parents and guardians are a little bit surprised and even a little bit shocked and sometimes a little bit resistant. But in my opinion, again, this is a mandatory key. I believe that each and every individual and family that is utilizing technology must be on a Family Online Safety Agreement. You can go to my blog or my website and download one. The one that I have there is from the Family Online Safety Institute, a phenomenal international organization dedicated to the safety of online communications. So what is this Family Online Safety Agreement? It is a contract, and adults are on it. Parents and guardians and adults have one side of the contract, and children are on the other side. And it is a list of rules, expectations, and strategies to keep your family safe. And what I love about this one from the Family Online Safety Institute is what I just said. There are expectations of the adults and of the children. For example, one thing might be, as a parent, that you're going to try to keep technology visible in a room where everybody can see it and you can see what your children are doing. I mean, they are reasonable expectations. Another thing that's in the contract would be an example of where you have maybe weekly or a biweekly time where you're going to go in and monitor the different sites that your children are visiting. It's already in the contract. For the children, an example would be is that if anything comes across any of their technology that feels unsafe or unhealthy or scares them, that they're going to come to you and talk to you about it. So the beautiful thing about this is that it sets the stage up front for expectations, transparency, and communication in our relationships with our technology. As I said, both parents and children agree to it, sign it, and it shows both of their responsibilities. If you don't care for the one that I have online that you can download, I really encourage families to take this one as a sample and develop one of your own. And of course, it needs to be age appropriate. So, for example, there's about 12 things on each side of the contract that I have in front of me. If your children are younger, you may just want to have 3 or 4 and sit down and develop this together. Gosh, what an amazing communication tool right there to sit down and to create one together as a family. As I said last week, we need to start the conversation with our children. And again, this is a beautiful way to start that conversation. And what I love about these contracts or these agreements is built right in them, as I said just a moment ago, are the rules and expectations for monitoring and supervising. So later we don't have an adolescent or a teen coming up to us and saying, you know what, this is my private world. You don't have a right to go in there and check it and look at it. It's already in place. I was talking at a workshop to a grandmother. Her name is Mary. She was raising her 14-year-old grandson, Ricky. And she said, Holly, we just weren't communicating. And I found out because I just went in and said, what is going on? And I found out that he was not only being cyberbullied, but he was also involved in cyberbullying, which is very common. And she said, I grounded him. I took his computer away, his iPhone, and nothing changed. In fact, it got worse. And she said, I happened to pick up your Cyberbullying No More book. And she said, Holly, I reset the parenting button. She got her and her grandson on the Family Online Internet Safety Agreement. She said it's worked, and they're communicating more, and most importantly, Ricky feels safe and protected. Okay, so key 1, Family Online Safety Agreement, non-negotiable. Second key for protection, know why you are giving your child a piece of technology or giving them permission to use it. 3 little sub keys here is it should be age appropriate, instruct them as you would any device on how to use it, and thirdly, do not cave into peer pressure just because someone else's family or their children have a piece of technology. Earlier we talked about driving and all the steps to prepare us and protect us. Remember that we need to do that as well as our children are traveling, navigating through the cyber world, the net world. Again, at a workshop, I was talking to a parent, Jack from Detroit, and he was telling me that he gave his 12-year-old son, Jacob, an iPhone. Everyone had one. He showed him a few things on it, but he did not clearly say what his son could do or could not do with it. Well, unfortunately and tragically, a predator started sending Jacob some sick photos. Fortunately, Jack caught it early when he saw his son upset and crying. And Jack said, you know what, Holly, this was a wake-up call for me. I sat down with Jacob. We went over how to use it. We put some safety measures in place, and we reset the rules and guidelines for usage. Again, kind of an unfortunate example, but one that got them both Jack and Jacob, back on a safe track. The third key, and this one kind of goes along with number 1 and number 2, is that you want to get to know your child's net neighborhood. In the real world, when our children want to go hang out at the mall or go to a dance or have a sleepover, we want to know where they're going, with whom, and why, and how long. All right, this same concept applies with technology. We want to sit down with them, opportunity to talk with them, see what they're doing, where they're hanging out, and what's going on. I mentioned a little bit ago, and even in the broadcast last week, that a common question that's asked me, Holly, isn't their online lives their private life? Should I snoop? And I answered last week and again today, no, but you must supervise and monitor. And if you want to call that snooping, oh well, I believe you need to supervise and monitor. But how can you do that respectfully? As we said a few minutes ago, if you have the Family Online Safety Agreement in place, it's automatically written up in there. I was talking with Jenna, a mom of adolescent twin girls, and she said, Holly, my girls are always on their laptops and phones, always in their room, and I thought everything was fine. Then one twin, Jasmine, broke down one day and she told her mom that she and her sister were being bothered by some stranger on their social network site that actually wanted to meet them. Jenna was so upset. She immediately sat down with both girls, spent time with them looking to see where they were going, where they were spending their time, and with whom. She got to know their net neighborhood. And remember, all this can be done ahead of time if you have the Family Online Safety Agreement in place. There's some other really important keys on my blog and my website for protection, and in my book, Cyberbullying No More. This is all we're going to go over with on the show today, but please go there for additional keys. We need to move on to prevention. And let's remember what we talked about earlier. This is important. Bullying and cyberbullying are harmful, aggressive behaviors. Both of these behaviors are symptoms and manifestations of unhealthy attitudes, beliefs, and feelings, of contempt, hatred, and disregard for another individual. As we discussed, the sources that contribute to a lack of empathy can come from different societal influences or norms that are learned, and or from personal injuries or injustices. However, we also discuss that the erosion of empathy is easily facilitated, exacerbated, and reinforced by the dynamics of our relationship with technology. Let's remember those feelings of disconnect with one another and those feelings of empowerment over another individual, and how the technology itself reinforces it. And let's remember, because this concept is going to lead us into a critical key of prevention, that the degree of access to and exposure to or consumption is a predictor to the degree of consequence, both positive and negative. Now, we're not going to throw the technology away. That wouldn't even be conceivable. But we are going to grab hold of 3 vital keys for prevention. And we're going to take the Cyber Balance Challenge. Get ready. Here's your first key. I believe that each and every individual and family needs to adopt a family philosophy of cyber balance. And as I said at the end of the show today, I'm going to share a story of a family who's got this cyber balance thing down, and they're doing it right. I'm going to ask you to do something that's not going to be easy, but it is going to be helpful. 2 things for your family. 1 is that you are going to do a family assessment. And I got this from 2 experts in the field who wrote a book called Cyber Kids, Cyberbullying, Cyber Balance. The first thing that you're going to do for 1 week is that you're going to take a little poll and make a chart, put it on your fridge, and you're going to survey how many hours your family spends on technology each day for each person. Do it for fun. Have a good time with it. But take this poll, write it down, and be honest for one full week, including the weekend. Then, on another chart or right next to it, I want you to answer this second question. How much time does your family spend talking and interacting face-to-face with no technology around whatsoever? Again, you're going to do that for an entire week. At the end of the week, you're going to add up the hours for both. You know, many times I'm asked, Holly, what is the recommended number of hours we should be on our technology a week or off of it? And what I ask individuals to do or families is to do this, what I'm just telling you. Because the important thing is that it's in balance. I want you to compare the hours you expend online to the hours that you spend in face-to-face communication and interaction, and ask yourself this question. Is it in balance? That's the key question. And then I'll give you some strategies in just a minute if it's not in balance. If it is, great. Two more questions that I want you to ask yourselves more on an individual or personal level to see if you are in balance with your technology. The third question, again, more personally or individually, are what habits have you developed in response to your technology? And do you kind of feel like you're almost held hostage to it? And a couple of things that you could check with is if you feel nervous or anxious when you can't get to your technology or when you can't answer that text or that email. Are you always connected with it? I have a friend of mine who his iPad or iPhone is always in his hand. It's almost like an extension of his hand. He can't quite put it down or let go of it. So just kind of do a personal check-in with that. The next question I want you to ask yourself is, when was the last time you sat down with someone face-to-face and really listened to him or her? Had a conversation with no technology where you looked at each other in the eyes and had this conversation. And the second part of this question would be, when was the last time someone sat down with you face-to-face and really listened to you with no technology? Again, just a couple of questions of self-assessment. Look to see if there is balance, and then set up some family and individual guidelines to implement balance, which we're going to get to in just a moment. I was talking to a young dad, Brandon, had small children, and these are some of the things that he shared with me after he took the Cyber Balance Challenge. He said, Holly, we no longer are using DVDs in the car except for long trips. Instead, we play card games, we have conversation. He also said another big change is that when they take a family vacation, they designate and limit technology time. Sometimes he said we even leave it at home. Brandon said that he and his wife are modeling healthy behavior and at home, and that when they do their work online, they only do it if their kids are doing their homework and if their kids don't need any help. Or they wait until their children have gone to bed before they get online. That leads to our second key, which is to find and establish ways to experience direct interaction. Remember, we want to cultivate and create face-to-face interaction and practice empathizing. Just as Brandon was doing, designate tech-free periods during the day. Replace tech games with real-life games, activities, sports. The holidays are coming up, and to really tap into that empathy component, do some good things for others through your church, your synagogue, your faith-based organization. Even with your family, do chores for one another and be present and available for others. You know, in some of the schools that are really practicing doing more direct interaction and face-to-face and practicing empathizing, they actually have empathy components built into their history and English lessons. They're teaching digital citizenship in their classes. And they do lessons such as cooperative or collaborative learning, where, again, students are putting away their technology and interacting on a face-to-face basis. Again, I've talked with families. I had this one amazing family that says one weekend a month, we spend the entire weekend without any technology Doesn't matter if we go away or we stay home, and we just focus on our relationships and face-to-face conversation. Some families want to do this one or a couple, 2 or 3 nights during the week. I'll never forget a conversation I had with a friend of mine, Margie. And she said, Holly, I got the wake-up call when we were out to dinner one night. And I was looking around at my family. Everybody's heads were buried at the table. No one was communicating. I got upset with my children, and so they put their cell phones and iPhones under the table and were texting actually under the table. My husband got up twice from dinner to go answer the phone and check his email. And she said, you know what? Enough is enough. And she said, now the dinner table is off limits, whether we're at home, whether we're out to dinner. So again, a really good example of how to bringing that balance back in to the family. Okay, the third key, get ready, and might be an ouch, parents, guardians, adults. We need to model behaviors that we expect from our children. We have a tremendous influence on their lives. We need to do what we say and model it. As the saying goes, we need to practice what we preach. A few years ago, I was talking to some younger children about 3rd grade, and I was very age-appropriately talking about how to keep them safe and different things about their technology to protect themselves and what they needed to do in staying safe. And at the end of the conversation, and we were talking about some of the fun things about technology, of course, and I said, is there anything that bugs you or that you don't like about technology? And this cute, darling little 3rd grade girl raised her hand and she said, you know, Mrs. Kenley, I get so frustrated and I get so angry when I try to talk to my mom and she's always on her phone. You know, sometimes out of the mouths of babes, right? And then a year ago this last summer, I was speaking to a group of college students in Southern California. These were psychology students, and we were talking about causation and all about bullying and cyberbullying. And I had one female student say to me, you know, Holly, I really wanted to talk with one of my professors. And I went to him and I said, when could I come in and schedule some time to talk with you? And he said, you know, Holly, I mean, to this young girl, he said, you know what? I only have online hours. And she said, Holly, I was so frustrated. I said, but I want to talk to you face to face. And he said, no, I'm sorry. You'll have to go on and email me during my online hours. When things like this happen, we are out of balance. We're out of connection with keeping that technology in its time and our face-to-face conversations and interactions in its place as well. I have other keys for getting into balance again on my website and my blog, so please go there and check that out. Today, we've taken a look at protection, how to establish safety measures to lessen our risk of injury, and we've looked at prevention. Both are so important. And remember, with a prevention, we're addressing the cause so as to effectively reduce and hopefully eliminate this toxic social behavior of bullying and cyberbullying. And as I mentioned last time, we can turn this around. We have that capacity. We are a people who rally around others when a crisis hits. We see that time and time again in the news. I believe we're in a crisis now with the bullying and the cyberbullying. So let's tap into the spirit of the human condition. Let's resurrect our ability to empathize and reconnect with one another. How can we do that? By taking the cyber challenge and implementing cyber balance. I mentioned a little bit ago that I wanted to share with you a story of a family who took the challenge, who's got this cyber balance thing down right. And I want to read a little something too. This is a story about this family, and it's called Face to Face Unwired. It was last summer, but I remember if it were yesterday, the image forever etched upon my soul. A family gathered together sharing barbecue with close friends. No technology to fill the space, only conversation and eager ears. With plates of lean steak, bowls of salad, and baskets of breads passed among us, the young adults home from college filled their bellies, and we ours. Dad bantered with his grown children, and laughter sprinkled over the table. No technology to distract attention. Focus on the speaker and minds present. The flow of food and drink continued for hours, and yet it flew by. Family stories told from years past, and we too told our own. Mom's nurturing spirit brought warmth to more delicate conversation. No technology to interrupt the flow of empathy. Each person available for the other. Stomachs beckoned for a pause, but soon desserts galore arrived, and a calm settled in as the sun started to disappear. Plans, dreams, and hopes were explored, each one creating a sparkle. No technology to dim the glow. Similar visions captured and shared by all. Darkness came too quickly as final words embraced the night. With winks and spars, young adults took their cues to clear and to clean. Older adults were left to say their thanks, goodbyes, and next times. No technology still, only eyes on eyes and arms reaching for hugs. Walking to our car, I felt full for the first time in a long time, realizing that what I devoured was so rare, so missed, so needed. No social pathogens, just hungry hearts feasting on a buffet of human connection, and savoring each and every morsel of being, of simply being present for one another. I'm going to give you some homework for the next week and months, and you are to do two things. First of all, I'd like you to take that Cyber Ballot Challenge. I'd like you to take that survey for a week, have fun with it, take that poll. Ask yourself at the end of it, are we in balance? If so, great. If not, get your online life in balance with your real life. Secondly, and as importantly, please get your family on a family online safety agreement. Remember, it's easier to do the hard work up front than live with the heartache at the end. Please start today. Start now. Next week, I do want to mention that I'm having a very special guest, Nancy Ferrari, and we're going to extend this conversation and talk about information age wellness. You won't want to miss this show. We're going to give you a lot more keys for understanding and for healthy moving forward. In the meantime, if you want more information, please go to my website at www.hollykenley.com, and that is Holly with an I. Email me your questions, your stories, the tools that have worked for you, and I will email you and get back to you. Until then, remember, wellness awaits each of us. We choose the time. Now is your time. Grab the keys and unlock your recovery. And until next time, believe and be well.